All right, welcome everybody. Shawn Marshall here. I'm the host of the Reinvent Yourself series. And for those just tuning in for the first time, the Reinvent Yourself series is for you sitting at home who you've been having an intuitive thought or feeling speaking to you, pulling you in a different direction in your life. You're having success now, but you also know that there's something else that you're on this planet to be doing, and you're at the point where you just can't ignore it anymore. And so we're here to inspire you to find the courage to go follow what it is that you're being called to do with your time on this planet. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Meg from LA. I got to read this so I don't say it wrong, but she's a transpersonal psychologist and also a holistic nutritional chef. And so much more, of course, writer, speaker. So Dr. Meg, welcome to the series.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and have a conversation with you today.
Likewise. Yeah. And you're joining us the day before your birthday too. So, happy birthday in advance. And thanks for being here for, birthday celebrations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. I think our trips around the sun are very, very special, in the day that marks that new year. Just it's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to hear your take on that too as we get to chatting.
Yeah.
Why don't I put the spotlight on you for a second? You can share way better than I can about what you're up to. So, share a little bit about what you're doing with your practice. And then even if you'd like to go into your story and share how you got to be doing it, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. My practice is, I work mainly when I do my one-on-one work with women abuse survivors with chronic illness, and I help them heal the connection between what happened to them in the past and how the body's been holding that experience all these years. And so there's, a lot of science behind this. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which is the largest public health study ever done, which is indelibly linked. It was done at Kaiser Permanente in San Diego, and it indelibly links the connection between difficult past experiences, traumas, things like, divorce or loss of a parent. There's so many different things that can affect us, especially in childhood, that will affect us all of our lives. And so I help people with a technique I created called Whole Person Integration Technique. And what it is, it's a negative core belief and emotional release process that's rapid acting, that gets to where the person's holding it in their body and helps them to understand the narrative, that the emotion that got developed and the belief that got developed in the moment that the trauma happened or series of traumas happened. Because our bodies are holding those experiences. So we get to that experience, we get to that thought, feeling, and belief, and I help them do this release process. And what's so awesome is to watch on the other side of it. It's so powerful to see people's illnesses actually heal. Like I've watched sciatica disappear. I watched,
Wow.
It was really amazing. I watched another woman who had an outbreak of cold sores, and she also had cancer in her tongue, and so the ridge in her tongue was actually split from the tumor. And
Wow.
Overnight, I know, the poor dear, it was so painful for her to eat. And overnight, after getting to the core beliefs and really the experiences that were associated with that condition, it healed up. Not the cancer took time, but the ridge on the tongue healed, and she was able to eat without pain, because the body always remembers what you're trying to forget. Is the title of my next book. So okay. It always remembers what you're trying to forget. And there are many different ways to help you release that. And this is another avenue for that. And I came upon it because of my own experience. So that's my private practice. And I'll get into my course, Evolving Intuition, Building Self-Trust for Life, for coaches, therapists, healers, and entrepreneurs, because I'm really excited about that and the direction that's going, and where I certify people in whole person integration technique to do on themselves and also to do on their clients. But you asked about my story as well. So since feels like a really good segue.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. So my story was that I had over a dozen illnesses by the time I was in my 20s. So I was in and out of doctor's offices. At a time in your life when you're supposed to be just out there having fun and figuring out your next steps.
Yeah.
I was just in so much pain, and I had what most people call invisible illnesses, where you look great on the outside and everything seems fine, but internally I was just falling apart. So from migraine headaches and severe depression from an abuse history, and then I had ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, just all kinds of digestive disorders, which are really common in abuse survivors. And so that's what I was dealing with, but I had no idea that the abuse that I went through was affecting my physical body in this way, and not just my physical, because you really can't separate all of those parts of yourself, which is why I got into holistic healing. It's the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the energetic / spiritual. All of those things are one thing. So if you neglect any part of the system, which is something I learned through my own experience, then you don't get true and lasting healing. And I found that the energy system is the most profound piece of it, because it's the part where you can heal literally overnight. I mean, it looks that way, but it's a progression. You do all these things and then you find the thing, and then it turns what people term a miracle happening in your body and in your life. So going through those illnesses was really a profound experience, because it was my wake-up call. It was the thing that said, I need your attention. My body was screaming at me. All these illnesses were screaming at me. And simultaneously, I had a near-death experience when I was a small child. I drowned.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was an intense experience, but I always had these intuitive abilities, and I always would see spirits, and I would have all these mystical experiences that people around me weren't having. Some people were, but the point was that I didn't know what to do with those either. And so by the time I was in my late 20s, everything converged at once, where I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed. I would have vertigo so terrible that I had to crawl across the floor to get to the bathroom.
Wow.
And my life was spinning out of control. That was a metaphor for my experience. My internal experience was the abuse history was spinning out of control inside of me. And so my body's reflecting this experience back to me. And that's what I want people to start thinking about, is the body is a metaphor for your experience. And, every part of the body has a purpose, like your sight. I worked with one woman. I hadn't thought about her in a long time. She just popped in my head. We were doing inner child therapy together, which is one of the therapies I do with people as well. And she literally had like the strongest eye prescription you can have. And after our second session, where it's all about the creative energy of the child and really getting that moving, she got out of that session where she'd been in an altered state, aware of everything, but had her eyes closed. And so she was accessing the information from her intuitive system. And she was able to see without her glasses. For the first time since she was 4, she had been sexually abused by her stepfather from the time she was 4 until she was 16 or something, when her mom walked in on it. It's horrible what people go through, but she didn't want to see that. Who wants to see that?
Right.
And so she was able to see all of a sudden, because she did the work. We did that work together, and we got to the core experience of why she didn't want to see. And that was so powerful. She ended up getting back to her old prescription, but what happened that day changed her life. For the next 4 or 5 hours, she just was like walking around the world going, I can see, this is unbelievable.
I can see. It's safe. It's safe to see.
Yeah. So, and I know these stories sound like over the top, like how is this happening? But we are so brilliant. Our bodies are so brilliant. And we're designed to heal. We're like self-healing mechanisms,
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I learned through my own experience of healing was I'm designed to do this. And so it was intuitively finding the modalities, the healers, and continuing to do that. Healing isn't something that stops. It's a process of getting well. And so each time I go through an experience of something coming up for me, like right now, I'm doing work with a somatic therapist on some really old stuff. And it's amazing how quickly it's working. And that's part and parcel to the fact that when you begin the healing journey, the further you get into it, the more quickly you heal from the deeper things that come up for you, if that makes sense. It's
The way I hear that is it's like a willingness. You sort of develop a willingness to go into the areas that are scary and uncomfortable, and then you can move quicker. Is that
yeah,
sort of what you mean?
absolutely, absolutely. And when
Yeah.
people come to me and they say, "I've done all this work on myself," and I feel like I'm back in the same old, I will always tell them, like, all the work you've done can't be undone. You know, you've done that evolutionary work. You're just being asked to go deeper now. And so, that's where I go at this point, having done this 25 years, is that I love to go really deep with people who've done a lot of work on themselves, and get them to that next level where they feel like, I'm blocked. I can't seem to get to the next place.
It's super powerful. I mean, it doesn't sound, I don't remember what the word you used was a little while ago, like it's out there or anything like that. Like the body is so smart. I 100% know that, we hold emotions and experiences and memories in our body. And I also know that if we don't process an emotion fully, that can create a big problem. And so that's what people see. And doesn't do any good to treat the symptom, like this woman with her eyes not working right. Like, okay, you got some medication, but that never ever went down and addressed the reason that she wasn't seeing. I mean, and that's the flip side too about the body being so intelligent, is that we also have such an amazing way to avoid the things that we need to avoid.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
like coping mechanism. Like she found a way to deal with it and make sense of it. And for her, it was don't see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's beautifully put. It's beautiful. And there's all kinds of coping mechanisms we use.
I do. I mean,
Yeah.
if I may share one that just came to me, I forgot about this, but when I was in the military, I hated it. Like I just hated the experience, and I committed to it. So I finished, I excelled, I advanced in rank fast. But one thing that I developed in that time was not remembering. I taught myself how to not remember because I hated it so bad that the next day I just wanted to forget the day prior. And then I just taught myself, let's go day by day, forget, day, forget. And then I realized afterward, years later, I was like, God, my memory sucks. What's that about? And
Yeah.
then I did some work on that and went back and realized, oh yeah, I taught myself how to forget everything. And then I changed my story around it and I have a great memory now. But it's just powerful
Um,
what we can create.
Absolutely. And that's something, you look at the military and what they do to break you down, to mold you into what they want you to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I look at that kind of treatment and I'm like, that's to me is abusive. Um, but that's what people with an abuse history go through, is they get broken down by the abuse, but especially when it happens as a child and something that happens over and over and over again, and you're hyper vigilant, you're dealing with post-traumatic stress or in the trauma stress, which is
Yeah.
major, and your body gets used to that. And so you'll forget. And a lot of people that come to me will say, I don't remember my childhood, you know? And I like the way you put it. It's like, I trained myself to forget. Like you were aware of the fact that you're forgetting this experience because this is really hard to go through.
Totally. Yeah. I had to create a way, I had to create a way to justify my commitment. And
Yeah.
that's what I told myself anyway, but
Wow. Powerful stuff we do.
it's,
Um,
yeah, it is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Do you find, I know you talked about the eyes and the digestive system, like digestive system highly correlates to abuse. What other correlations do you find, like common things? Like, I know a lot of people get migraines and a lot of people are low on energy. And what are some other common symptoms that people have that, can be correlated back to abuse that hasn't been sorted through?
What's interesting is it's different for everybody. We store our energy differently in our bodies. We store our experiences differently in our bodies, but I do see a lot of digestive issues. Um, I see, especially in the abdominal region, where they're not absorbing nutrients. Leaky gut syndrome is a big one that I see a lot. I also see a lot of long-term bladder infections, urinary tract infections, kidneys. And, when you look at Chinese medicine and how they look at the body, I look at all these different systems and just see, how the different organ systems have different emotions associated with them. And so with the kidneys, you're dealing with life force energy, with the liver. Like I worked recently with a woman with fatty liver disease, and she had a very neglectful mother who just really wasn't there. Just she would take off and leave her to take care of her sister as a small child, which is a huge responsibility to put on a child. And so she had fatty liver disease and she had kidney issues. So we worked with that, and within like 6 months, all of that was gone. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty powerful. It's really powerful.
Are you finding that they're also on medications? Is that pretty common when they come to you?
Often they are, and I
Yeah.
don't tell people to go off of their meds. I will refer them to people that are more qualified than me to prescribe herbal remedies or other things that intuitively sort of vibe with the client, if they feel intuitively led to follow my suggestions. And then of course, I'll prescribe food to help them, because there's just lists and lists of things that support the body with certain conditions. And so that's something that I did a lot for celebrity clients, is help them with diets for healing conditions that they had in their bodies. Or for food allergies, or those kinds of things. So cancer, that's another big one that a lot of people develop. And in the adverse childhood experiences study, they did find huge links with cancer and traumatic experiences. And they also found links with lung diseases, which I thought was interesting. In Chinese medicine, the lungs are the seat of grief. And so, your body's grieving, the child inside of you is grieving. And I see this over and over again with clients where there's a lot of grief that they have to process and release. But again, the technique I created, whole person integration technique, helps them release it really quickly. So it's not about the story itself. It's about the narrative that the emotion is holding inside of the body mind. It has its own story. Which is fascinating to watch how we store our energy.
Totally. Say that again. It's the narrative that's attached to the emotion and the emotion that came from the event or the series of events.
Yes.
Yeah, that's freaking powerful.
And the emotion is carrying its own story, and it's carrying its own belief system that happened. And usually the belief system is all about protecting the self from anything like that happening again. But you can't protect yourself from things. Things will happen in your life. You can, when you do change this within the energy field, I watch people's realities changing and shifting, where the things that triggered them before just don't trigger them anymore. It's so beautiful to watch that experience, and to live it inside of yourself. It's like, wow, that person would have set me off and I didn't get upset. It's so cool. So.
Yeah, like you're expecting it to happen. The conditioning's there, but then the trigger, it just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What about, like, you mentioned the lungs a second ago. Do you see people get off like an inhaler? Maybe they've been on an inhaler since they were young, and maybe that was related to trauma. Have you seen people get off inhalers and get like lung capacity back and operating differently?
Yeah, I've seen people it really dramatically improve that and hardly ever have to use them.
Yeah.
Um, because that's really a huge correlation between trauma and also environmental influences. I do look at that as well. What are the things in the environment and in the food that are affecting the body? Because that helps the body process so much more quickly when you're feeding it the right foods. And when you've eliminated things from your environment that could be causing that toxic overload. Because again, it's a holistic process.
Yeah.
So yeah,
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 that's interesting. It's like if you've got a lung issue that's attached to, something that happened that you haven't processed yet, and this narrative is running from this emotion, then it seems like so easy that triggers stressful eating because you're still not really addressing maybe if there's this subtle stress coming from, that narrative. So then that triggers poor eating, and then the poor eating comes in and makes the situation worse, the symptom worse that you're having. And
yeah.
it's like, at what point, how do you just stop it and be like, I know you're having a craving for these foods, and these foods are just making the situation worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great question. And that's what most people say is like, well, how do we stop this? The person has to be in the position where they're done. They're just done with the patterns. They're done with the experience. They're done with the pain. Sometimes they're already in that place and they just haven't found the right things to really help them get to the next level, or they're in the process of getting well and they don't realize, that the next thing is going to be the thing that's the tipping point for them. But there's that moment of decision where you have a full body decision of no more. I am not doing this anymore. I'm done. I'm going to get well. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get well. And what's so cool when you make that decision, and this is a very intuitive thing, is your intuition opens up and all these people start coming towards you. You're like, you've opened the door by that decision, right?
That internal thing.
Yeah. And now you've got all of a sudden friends of yours are telling three different people are telling you, read this book or go to this practitioner, or try this or try that. And then when you're open to feeling, and that's what intuition really is connected with feeling. And that's why these emotions that get stuck in the field and in the body, they get in the way of you being able to really open up your intuitive so you can follow that inner guidance system, because yours is different than mine. It's going to lead you to different things than mine does, because I have a different everything, a different body
Right.
chemistry, different experience, different way of thinking, different upbringing, all of those things. And so your internal guidance system knows exactly what's right for you. And so getting in touch with that to lead you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing to help you heal is so powerful. There's so much juice there,
Totally. Yeah. And it's so like counterintuitive from the way we were brought up. We want to look out there and look for answers outside of us. And yeah, I think even if you find the right person who can support you, you still have to at some point, like, be able to hone that in and say, yeah, like what you're saying aligns with what I'm feeling, and let's go, rather than like fix me. And
Yeah.
I hope it's going to work.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the take a pill culture that we're in. And I get it. I mean, I lived in it for a long time. I grew up with a scientist mother, and my dad was
Oh,
a
wow.
defense contractor. So like these are very logical people. And I was like rushed to the doctor with every little sore throat or headache or anything. And here's your next and that's part of what contributed to my illnesses later, was cycle after cycle of antibiotic, of eating the wrong foods, of all kinds of, and then the abuse history on top of it. It was just this big soup. And then I'm also this highly intuitive, highly sensitive, highly empathic individual. And so I got sick, and a lot of people are in this boat. They're sick from all of those, that whole soup. I had to use the soup metaphor because I am a chef too.
I see what you did there. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot to talk about there, especially just the intuitive part where you're like taking on energies and how that affects you. Can you can we go back though to like that
Yeah.
time frame where you were like early 20s, and you had been having a lot of issues, health issues. What was the turning point for you? Whereas things really started to click and make sense, and you started to have some like a shining light that, okay, maybe this isn't permanent.
Yeah, well, there was a turning point moment that was really powerful, and it seemed small at the time. And I love this about looking back and looking back at your intuitive history. But I was reading an article on alternative medicine in the Washingtonian magazine, and I was maybe about 27, 26, 27, 27 years old. And I could barely hold the magazine up. I was in so much pain because I have scoliosis in my upper back and a ruptured disc in my neck. And so all these muscles were a wreck, and doctors were always sending me to bed with painkillers and muscle relaxers. And literally I'd be in bed for weeks at a time on these,
Wow.
like crying. And of course I'm depressed. They're not going to the root cause in a lot of it. I mean, it was a whole soup of things, but including dairy products created muscle spasms in my body, like horrible muscle spasms for me.
Wow. Dairy products, huh?
Yeah. And it's just like, you find these things and it unlocks the key. But that moment when I was reading the magazine and I was reading about chiropractic care, and I could barely hold the magazine up, and I'm thinking, oh, my boyfriend at the time was like, oh, he has back problems, I should send him to the chiropractor. And then it went bling. Look at how much pain you're in. Take care of yourself. It was just that voice said, take care of yourself. That was the moment I took my healing into my own hands. And I remembered a friend of mine was raving about her chiropractor. And so as soon as I had that moment and I thought of her, and this is intuition, is reminding me of her, I picked up the phone right away and called her and said, I need your chiropractor's number. And I was afraid. And I was terrified. I'd heard all of these horror stories about chiropractors. Totally. You don't go to chiropractors. Yeah. I know. So, and then when my chiropractor told me the first time she went to a chiropractor, she took her attorney with her.
Well, I've never heard of that. Wow.
That's how terrified she was.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want a witness. It's just like, and I'm like, that's the person I'm going to go to. That's how afraid I was, And
so at that point, I want to pause on just one thing on that point where you were so accustomed to how like bad you felt at that point that it became normal. That's like what I heard, because you were saying to your boyfriend, like, go see a chiropractor. And then you realize, oh crap, like I'm not doing well myself. And then you really like accepted that. That was an aha moment, even it sounded like in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It had become so normal. It was just like, well, today's just a better level of not so horrible,
Yeah.
And it was horrible. And I do remember my chiropractor saying to me, she was doing some pressure point therapy on me, on my back. And she's like, just tell me where you feel it radiating, and I would tell her where I felt it radiating. And I was just like, and she said, Meg, do you understand that's pain that you're feeling? And I'm like, I guess so. I was so accustomed to it. She said, wow. You are in the kind of pain every single day that would bring the average person to their knees. They would not be able to get through the day. But you've become so accustomed to this level of pain that it's just normal for you. I remember my massage therapist, because she sent me to a massage therapist, a yoga instructor. She got me into meditation. She was just like, she was the person that opened up all of those wonderful things for me. And the massage therapist said it was like massaging a tree. that I was
Oh my God.
she said, you're just so hardened. And think about this language. You're
Yeah.
so hardened to the pain. Like, I just want to cry when I think about that's where I was.
Yeah.
That the pain was so hard, and I had hardened myself to it, to the point where I wouldn't allow myself to feel it. But my body's screaming at me every day to make a different choice. And it was painful. And I do remember my doctor saying it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. And it did. But that's, part of the process. But I had to travel through that pain. And I think that's a message everyone should understand, is that when you travel through that pain, getting to the other side of it, you become 1,000 times lighter and freer on the other side of it. And it's so worth the momentary journey of going through it, because it's really a blip. Like, when I look back on that experience, the months of going through that pain was a blip compared to where I get to be now on the daily basis. Like, I'm so fortunate, and I'm so happy, and I'm so grateful I get to be in this body now. It's powerful.
That's super powerful. What and I remember there was a point when I was in San Diego, I worked with, had like a circle of referral partners, like a handful of chiropractors, and then a few massage therapists, acupuncture, a few other people like that. And it was even if you got, there were times where like a patient would go to the chiropractor, and then they would open up. And then the chiropractor, we naturally referred. It was like, you need to go see these other people. But then sometimes there was resistance, internal resistance, like, they get to the next person and I'm not ready to do that or whatever. So it's really cool that you were in that place where you were receptive, working with everyone who showed up. Because it's like, I get it, intuitively, and you open the energy field, people came in, and then you still have to make a choice at that moment. Like, am I going to choose to work with you? You have a solution, you see me, and am I going to make that choice, or am I going to not make that choice? So pretty cool that you made that choice. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Another,
you.
yeah, absolutely. So that was sort of the moment where you started to shift things for yourself. Where was the point where you realized the connection from, abusive background to all of these, symptoms and the pain that you were going through? How did you connect?
I started reading books on mind body medicine. And one of the first ones I read was by Dr. Joan Borisenko, who's one of the pioneers of the field. And it was like, guilt is the teacher, love is the lesson, I think it was. And it started to shift as I learned about that. But when I really saw the application of it was when I went through my doctoral program in transpersonal psychology. And I saw in my own body how, when you release those memories from the system, how much better you felt. Like I felt, and all these side effects that happened that I didn't expect, I didn't know. They kept telling me, I said, as you do this work, you'll get younger. And I was like, what? Okay, whatever.
Like, you didn't have any context for even like what that meant at the time.
I didn't, but as 25 years have progressed, seeing, how I have been sort of held in time through the work that I've done, through the unburdening. And it says a lot about how our burdens do age us, our physical, mental, emotional abuse burdens, the things that we're carrying. And we're not just carrying, what's interesting too, is we're not just carrying stuff for ourselves. We're carrying things for our ancestors, for our mom and our dad, and getting into that, the generational trauma too, which is part of what my technique works with as well. It takes you wherever you need to go inside of yourself, and it'll go right there to the next thing that's up for you to process.
Oh, that's so powerful, because you can't control that. If you have control issue or a challenge with control, you got to let that go, right? And start following that path as it
Yeah.
unfolds for you.
Yeah. And then we'll get to work with the control directly. What does the control
Yeah.
believe? When
Yeah.
did it come in? What's it thinking? What's it feeling? So it's like, it's a powerful process. So
To talk about the ancestral trauma, like if you're carrying, stuff from your ancestors, and how you heal that and what that looks like when you do heal ancestral trauma.
yeah, what I've come, this is a radical thing I'm going to say, and you might have heard it from some of your other presenters, but is that I've
I
come to,
haven't actually, my girlfriend does this work, but I haven't
uh-huh.
interviewed anyone on this yet. So you're the first on my series to talk about, generational type stuff, ancestral healing and
Yeah,
trauma.
I've come to think, or to really believe from all the work that I've done and the hundreds of people I've worked on, is that our DNA is a makeup of the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs of our ancestors. And that the whole study of epigenetics actually supports this thought, is that you personally can turn around those old thoughts, feelings, and beliefs through a number of channels, through changing the way that you eat, through changing the way that you think, through changing the things that you feel, the way that you look at life, literally changing your lens of perception. And a lot of your perceptual lens is made up from what you watched your parents do, what you watched your grandparents do, and those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that got passed down through the DNA. And you can literally shift that. They've learned that you can turn genes off, through making different choices. And that's really a big part of what I'm talking about today. Is it's about making a different choice. It's about saying no more to these
Yeah.
patterns, and I'm done, and I'm going to make a different choice for myself, for my healing. And as you do the work for yourself, I've seen changes in my own family that they wouldn't necessarily have noticed, but I've noticed differences and changes in my parents, especially, as they've gotten older. And I think too, as they watch the person in the family, because it's usually one person in the family who kind of takes up the mantle of healing for the family. I see this a lot,
Yeah,
especially in my
actually, I get
clients.
that. I get what you're talking about. It's like that
Yeah.
one rebel child who is sort of standing for the whole family.
Yeah, exactly. And that they're taking the story and turning it around. And that it helps to heal everybody in the system. Because I believe that what you do for one, you do for all. Anyway, that you're in a consciousness, we are in a consciousness, and we can keep moving up into different layers and levels of consciousness through the work we do on ourselves. And that it helps the whole of humanity. And the more we focus in that direction, instead of always looking at the horrible things that are going on in the world, and there are horrible things going on in the world, there's no doubt about that. But staying in the lane of consciousness and in evolving that helps heal everybody and bring them forward too, because we're all one ultimately.
Yeah, I know. That's such a big idea, right? And it's like wrapping your brain around that is work.
Yeah.
To realize that we are one. We're not separate. I'm not a tree and you're a different tree. Like the roots are connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this is powerful. I love this conversation because you hear so much, I hear so often that, your DNA lends itself to hypertension, or it lends itself to obesity, or all these things. And it's like, I get that. I get that that's the formula in your DNA based on history. And I also, though, I think what just gets left out from the common, conversation from medical advice or what have you, is that that's not a life sentence either. It's there, but you can shift it. And like you said, you can turn a gene off. Like, wow, what if I just turn the hypertension gene off? I don't know if it works that way, but right.
Yeah, and from my perspective, and now I'm like, oh yeah, I've had a few clients with hypertension that healed it. So And we did work on generational. Now that I think about it, one client in particular, we worked on generational trauma in her family, and yeah, that helped to heal the hypertension, and she doesn't have to take any medication for it now.
Wow.
So
Come
yeah,
on. This is awesome. This needs to be
yeah,
shouted off a rooftop. Like, I think there's this
yeah,
disconnect. I'm not a medical professional, but like, there's obviously something to facts and like looking at science and saying like this is what it is with your DNA, but it's like we get to have more open-mindedness around it, and not just look at it like here's the fact, your DNA says you're high risk, or they always ask you at the doctor's office, do you have a history of heart disease, do you have a history of this or that, and it's like cause and effect, like, okay, if you have that in your family, then we really have to watch out for you. And it's like, yeah, maybe,
yeah.
but maybe we can talk about how do we shift that and change the whole programming, if you will.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that medical science will catch up to this. They've been studying it. They study mind body medicine. There's a lot of science behind this. It just, there's still a lot of doctors that refute the information. And that's okay. It's, as I've watched the last 25 years, and I've seen things like in food, for instance, that I learned about 25 years ago, like trans fats, for instance, hydrogenated oils. And suddenly 25 years later, you start seeing like a poster at Whole Foods it says, no trans fats in here, um,
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
now aware of trans fats and how they cause cancer and how they cause heart disease and, all the and diabetes, the three major things that people get in this culture. And so that those contributing factors to illness. But so anyway, I'm just hoping that as we go into the future, that we will look for the emotional root cause of illness. We will look at how the body's holding that illness. And we will look at how our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, not just ourselves, but the ones that we've adopted from the people that came before us, how those affect us going forward. And that we will look at the energy system, because that's where the gold is. The energy system, I think, is the most powerful part of you. It's the permanent part of you. It's where your intuition, your purpose, your meaning, your value, all of that lies in that place. And as you get in touch with that part of yourself and you develop that part of yourself, healing happens.
Can you talk more about the energy system? I get that you said like that's where your intuition, your purpose, and all that lies.
Yeah.
But for someone like hearing this term for the first time, like from you, can you just, I don't know, I love what you're saying. Talk more about the energy system.
Yeah, the human energy system is the study of our energetic field and how that associates to the physical body. So there's 7 major centers of the human energy system. And when I look at them, I look at a number of different systems that come together, including the chakra system from the Vedic tradition of India. I look at the meridian systems of the body that you read about in Chinese medicine and acupuncture, all these ancient healing systems that have worked for thousands of years. Yeah. To ignore those systems, I think, is one of the biggest tragedies of the way that we look at medicine today. And that when we look at the energy field and the energy system and how, because that's literally what I'm working with at the end of the day. It's the thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and emotions, because emotional energy has charge. It has the most charge of anything. I mean, you just look at all of the Marvel comics, like a superhero gets angry and things shatter, or
Right.
It's emotional energy, right?
Yeah.
And I look at somebody like Spider-Man who has spidey senses. We all have those spidey senses, and a lot of people here will talk about the spidey senses, which is your intuition and getting in touch with that. But it's kind of all over the place until you develop it. Just like a superhero power is all over the place until you develop it. So the energy system in your energy field is that's where quantum healing can happen. Quantum physics is another science that supports this. There's so much information out there. Amazing healers in the world who've been dedicating their lives to this, like Dr. Carolyn Mace, Donna Eden, and her husband, who's also a medical doctor. She wrote a book called Energy Medicine like 30 years ago. There's a lot of stuff out there. Gerber, I can't remember. He wrote a book on energy medicine. I can't remember his first name, Dr. Gerber. So there's
I've heard of Gerber.
Yeah. So there's just bringing the ancient philosophies together with modern science is really powerful. And people that are talking about that, I think it's the next level of healing and where everything is headed. And that energy diagnosis, this is something Carolyn Mace said. I listened to her 25, 30 years ago. And she said that when she saw that energy diagnosis was the wave of the future and how we would really learn to diagnose and treat people in the future. So yeah, the energy field's powerful.
Super powerful. I like your analogy of the superheroes, where it's like, if you're not careful, you throw a little spider off your hand. It's like, a cobweb, if you're Spider-Man, you're like, oh shoot, sorry. You hit your friend with a spider web. And it's like, just a great analogy to that. We have to practice and learn how to develop our intuition and our emotional energy, like you said. And we have it, but we just, it's like chaotic inside of us until we sort of figure out how to use it.
Yeah, you just said it right. And that's the thing. People that are highly empathic and sensitive and intuitive, developing your intuition will help hone all of that. So that it's because I got to tell you, I was empathy gone wild. And when I was like that, I was sick. And there are a lot of people that are dealing with this, that are holding all of that in their bodies. So that's really kind of at the root and core of everything, is the intuitive. And the intuition is how the energy system functions. It functions through the intuition, and the primary things that block your intuition are your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs from traumatic past experiences, and series of those experiences. So this leads me right into my Evolving Intuition, Building Self-Trust for Life. It's a course and coaching program. People can hop in anytime, but I'm actually going to be running it live in September 21st. And I know this comes out, I think, the 22nd. So if anybody's hearing this the day after, come on, you can come in anytime.
Perfect.
But yeah, I rarely run it live. I haven't done that in a year. But it's got ongoing coaching. It's got lifetime access. It's got other members that you have access to that you can practice with. Because that's the thing, is people don't understand how intuitive they are until they start practicing, and they'll learn how to read people intuitively, which is something that I learned a long time ago, and then I do use in my practice. So whole person integration technique is an intuitive type of therapy. And so I help them develop their intuition first to be able to do that work. And then it helps them release their own blockages to intuition. So it's teaching them how to release their own traumas or their own fallout from it, in the way it's manifested in the body mind, in the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that get stuck in the body. So yes, I'm really excited about running that for 8 weeks, but there's ongoing coaching throughout the year as well, weekly coaching that's live with me. So they get that and the pre-recorded course, and it's really exciting. It's to watch how much people change, how quickly. Is really powerful. So you get to see how intuitive you really are. You already are. And if you are somebody like I was highly intuitive. I had all the different types of intuition, and I didn't know what to do with that or how to hone it, that's a really good person to come in.
That's powerful. I know for a fact there's a lot of people listening right now that resonate with that. I know I talked to a lot of them already, and there's a whole new audience coming in listening to this. And so super powerful. I just want to say, if you're listening at home, this speaks to you, that's you, tuning in and being present and hearing a message that's for you. So take action on that. Why don't we roll this right into, you're also offering a gift, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that? This is the first interview where I actually just wanted to start with a free gift because it's awesome. Talk about that.
There's 4 that you can get from me today. Actually, I have a lot of things to give, but if you're interested in developing your intuition, I do have like a tiny little mini course and a free guide. It's 5 ways to develop your intuitive abilities now. And you can go to meghaworth.com/intuition / to
I'll
get
link
that
it
free
too
guide.
in the
Perfect.
email. Yeah.
Awesome. And then if you go to my website, meghaworth.com, and it's HAWORTH.com, you can get my 10 steps to overcoming the effects of victimization. And so you get into whole person integration technique there, and learning the basics around it. And then you also get a free recipe book, 5 anti-inflammatory recipes for people on the go. And they were all created for my celebrity chef clients. And you also get the Adverse Childhood Experiences quiz, which helps you determine your level of risk. And then I do free assessments with people. So if they want to do a free assessment around that, then we can do a free consultation. I like to talk to everybody I work with, and this goes for the Evolving Intuition program, to make sure it's a good fit.
Yeah.
Make sure you're ready for it. Make sure we vibe with each other. I think that's really important. And just, yeah.
I agree with you on all that. I love it. I'm excited. And the victim thing that you're giving away, I'm calling it a thing. That's not nice, but was it the 10, say it again about the victim?
The 10 steps of overcoming the effects of victimization.
Yeah. So powerful. It's on the other side of being a victim is responsibility, and being able to stand responsible is just one of the most powerful, freeing places that you can stand. So that in itself, I know, is such a powerful gift. So thank you for offering, everything that you're offering to the audience. And
you're welcome.
Just want to say to the audience, like, for real, this is where you go from taking information in, but you know what? You came here for a reason. Something called you to come here today to listen. And this is that moment, choice point for you, where you just move on to the next thing in your life, or you just take a pause and take action and start moving in another direction. And so, Dr. Meg, I mean, you just gave the audience such a great way to shift and start moving in a different direction.
Great, thanks.
Without judgment. I don't mean different in judgment, but in a way that they're being called to move. So y'all at home, take action.
Yeah, I want to mention one more thing. It's another gift, actually.
Yeah.
My YouTube channel at Dr. Meg Haworth, there's a lot of great videos on there about intuition and things to help you with developing yours. So that's another avenue. And then I also have a series on there called Intuitive Turning Points with successful entrepreneurs, talking about their turning point moments and how they intuitively, because every entrepreneur I talk to, like yourself, there's a moment, where you knew you had to be you, or a series of moments where you're just like, I got to do this thing. I got to help people. I got to fulfill my purpose. And so I love sharing those stories with people as well. So.
Yeah, I saw both of those on your YouTube channel. You have some great resources for helping people develop their intuition, and it's a great alignment. I love it. So this is great. This is great talking to you. I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you did, back in your 20s, and listening to, the words on that article that you read, and going to the chiropractor, having the courage to go there, because that feels like death the first time you go. I know that. I was terrified too. So great job, and look what you're causing and creating in the world right now as a result. It's really powerful.
Yay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your insights and your intuitive understanding and this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for that acknowledgement. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and it's pre-birthday time. So have a great
Yay.
birthday, and everyone watching at home. We'll see you soon.